All right, we're ready.
Okay, cool. So welcome back everybody. It's been about a week since we last spoke, so I'm glad we got the gang back together. And I wanted to dive back into the same topics we were talking about last time because I think that there's so much more to explore. So I know we went through that path of, career success and success in the corporate environment. But before we ended, I think we all started to agree that there are so many other aspects of success and what that looks like in your personal lives, in your relationships, and in so many other factors. So I figured, part two, we should just keep on going and see, what does success look like in some of those other avenues that you know tie outside of just in the business world. So Joe, maybe if you got any insight that you could grace us with, I'd love to hear your thoughts, man.
Okay, just to make sure I understand correctly, you're talking about different avenues of success in regards to like business, with like family, relationships, that type of category.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are no real categories. I'm trying to understand what your categories are even and like, how you think those things need to be in some sort of alignment to feel successful. Like that could be completely different for everybody.
Yeah, that's that's a very good point. Um, so if I think about it right now, there's probably three categories that kind of work together where I think you mentioned last time where if one of them's out of whack, the others could kind of fall off balance as well. So for me, kind of overall wellness. So just kind of like taking care of health overall. I feel like
Hmm.
that's in a way, and I feel like it can come across as selfish in a way, but if you don't take care of yourself, it's hard to take care of anything else. So,
Mm,
if you don't exist, you can't have relationships with people. If you don't exist, you
true.
can't operate a business. So, taking care of yourself and making sure you're in the best place mentally, physically, and all that stuff is probably the biggest pillar. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that and put themselves behind other things, but you can't. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we talked about business and finances. That's also important, and the level of importance of that, of course, varies. So up
Hmm.
to a certain point, when you're trying to cover the basic necessities, that priority is huge. You've got to make sure you're fed.
Yeah.
That again to survive. And then I think the last pillar, which all of these pillars have different layers and things like that, but would be interpersonal relationships, I guess. So, we're
Hmm.
talking family, friends, associates, networking, things like that. That's also another big category. And so, if, as we spoke about, if any of those three are out of whack, I'm going to be off of my game in the other categories as well.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. No, really good stuff. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper because also I use these conversations as a place to like learn and grow from you guys. And so for those of you who don't know Joe, he's a pretty fit guy, just in general. So so like let's talk from a practical perspective. How if we're touching on the overall wellness, like what are some things that you do to build that wellness and to maintain that wellness? I think that'd be a huge lesson for really like getting that message out.
So it's odd, and like everything else, it evolves. So
Hmm.
it changes. There are a couple things that have stood out and have kind of been central for a long time, and that's consistency. So I
Okay.
think the biggest thing, a lot of people might try to go and do big bang with anything, just completely change your diet, or
Mm,
get in and go hardcore into fitness, and usually that's like a shooting star. It's a flash in the pan if you don't have an underlying solid set of habits, that you're going to
mm,
fall back to when you get tired of working out 4 hours a day or eating 150 calories a day, you're naturally going to go back to something. And if
Yeah.
something is solid, you're going right back to fast food or right back to
Mm.
whatever. So all that work you put in is wasted. So for me, it's very much about the habit and also being having a little grace with yourself. So, for
Okay.
instance, I might wake up today and say, you know what, I really don't feel like working out. And
Hmm.
so instead of not working out, what I'll do is just say, hey, just do it, but take it a little easy. And there are two
Got
benefits.
it.
One is you do it. And the second, a lot of times you get in there and you realize it's more of just it's more of a mental thing. You just don't feel like doing it,
Hmm.
but really you can. So you get in there and you start turning it on mentally and you end up pushing a little bit further. And a lot of those same principles apply to what you eat. So
Yeah.
saying just consistently try to, when nobody's looking, make the right choice with what you eat so that you can have a little grace with yourself if you're going to go eat with friends and family, have a drink,
Mm.
whatever it is, but you have that bandwidth to have some fun and you're not sitting there dieting and eating some bland, terrible stuff every single day of
Yeah.
your life.
Got it. Got it. No, that I mean that makes a ton of sense. Like the consistency over intensity. Like that's almost like a phrase that people should live by. Cause you start off so hard, and I've done it so many times where it's just like, man, I'm about to, run 10 miles and like do all of these things. And like by the end of the week, I'm off for 2 weeks.
Want that
Absolutely.
those instant results, so you come out the gate hard. Yeah,
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
I would say too, Joe, to add on to that, probably part of the process too, with like eating healthy and working out and being in routine. Like it's a boring process, especially
Mm,
the eating part and making sure you're eating right. Like it's
yep.
boring, but it works. Like the bland chicken or the eating right isn't quite fun to eat the same thing every day or be consistent. So I think it's good to mix it in there, but that gets results. Even if you just have a
Hmm.
plan, even though it may not be, like I think with that, just trying to make it as easy as possible. So, um, with that as well. So just
Yes.
kind of stick to what you like, even though you may get tired of eating the same thing over and over. It's good to have those days where you can mix it up in there, but at least you have a plan, at least you're consistent and you're
Hmm.
eating the same thing every day. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of it once you figure out something that works for you too.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's for me, just like when we were talking about net worth and talking about like the path to being more financially secure, and how I had to automate my savings and
Mm-hmm.
automate the lifestyle that would get me to that path. It's the exact same way when it comes to like my physical fitness, which I probably mess up on way more than than I do even with like
The
saving
easiest
money and
way.
stuff. But like I literally have the same grocery order every single week just because it just makes life so simple.
Yep.
I know exactly what kind of meats I'm gonna get. I know I'm gonna get the oatmeal and then the peanut butter, and it's like I just literally repeat the same exact order and almost eat the same thing for like quite a few meals throughout the week
Yep.
because it just takes away the willpower and you just are on autopilot. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is success in any instance is not that exciting usually. It's just a bunch of really small, consistent
Mm-hmm.
actions, and it's not that exciting until you see those end results starting to form.
Yep, I agree. I mean, that was a similar process when I was paying off my debt. Like it wasn't fun and it wasn't exciting to be paying off debt. I mean, it was a great feeling afterwards once it was all gone, but it wasn't like the excitement of being able to go, you know, buy new shoes, buy new clothes, or just eat out as much as I want. Like you don't get that same excitement. Like, you
Mhm.
pay off like a, few $1,000 student loan. Like it isn't the same as going and buying like a really nice flat screen TV or a nice gaming system or
Yeah.
something like that. Like you don't get that same excitement, but you still get that later on in life. Like you get the satisfaction now. Like I'm so glad I did it because I feel much better
Mhm.
now, as opposed to it's a more sustaining feeling. over the long term than it is with just getting a nice little high from getting a nice item or nice pair of shoes or a nice watch or something like that. Like it's good, but that wears off. As opposed to
Yeah.
take stuff, put in work, take care of yourself financially, like that over time, like you feel those results and it's good. It's probably the same thing, Joe, would and during when you guys bought real estate properties too. Like, it's probably not, it's probably exciting, but it's a big chunk of money that you put on something. But at the time, it's probably like, oh, like, it's, I bought it. Okay, what do I do now? But once you start to get the monthly rent in, the monthly income in, it's like a reminder every month. It's like, man, this is. I'm glad I made the decision to do that investment, even though I may have been unsure at first, but it's
Hmm.
paying off now.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like you bring up an excellent point where a lot of things are like we talk about the comparing and contrasting. So um, you mentioned eating. So if you eat, you're eating food every time, you get these like spikes of, I guess, joy,
Mm-hmm.
but that goes
Hmm.
away versus the other way around. Some of the various cumulative benefits that are kind of hard to see, especially when you're, diving through some bland chicken. But
Yeah.
it's like each of these things raises your base level of satisfaction. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, when you paid off your loan, had you gotten these shoes or, gotten a TV, whatever it is with that money, you might have kind of spiked a little bit of joy.
Yep.
However, your level of satisfaction would have remained a little bit, below what it could have been, knowing that you've got this
Hmm.
debt in the back
Oh
of your
yeah.
mind every time you make that
Yep.
payment. Now you're free of that. And heck, you can still get the joy of,
Exactly.
hitting those
Exactly.
spikes
Yeah,
if
and
you
now
want.
when you see those items, it's not a like you get that joy from buying them at the beginning, but if you still have a lot of debt or something over your head, after a while those items become like you don't enjoy them as much. You start to
Not
regret
at all.
buying them. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
definitely a different perspective of feeling buying stuff when you have money and you're investing and you're doing right with your money financially, as opposed to just
Hmm.
blowing it all on these items.
I've actually
Yeah.
got, and I feel like this is, I don't know, whatever. I've got a question. I'm curious if y'all have something here. Is there a spot where instant gratification is is there a spot where instant gratification doesn't have a drawback?
Hmm.
What do
Man,
you
that's a
mean, Joe? Like
really
the
good
like
question. Like, yeah, explain that a little bit more.
You think about a lot of things where people want things now.
Uh,
So, for instance, we're talking about eating and being healthy and things like that. You might just go get lipo, or you might go get something quick to get some results without putting in that hardcore the work and building those habits. Do you think there's a
mm.
situation where it's like, hey, that shortcut actually does pay off exactly the same as putting the work over time?
um, I haven't seen that happen before. Like there could be like in my own experiences, I don't see that to be the case. Like even in the situations where like from the outside looking in, someone could say like, "Oh, you took the shortcut or you took the easier path." Usually one or two things happen. One, I'm consciously taking the easier path and I know that I'm kicking the real task down further off and so it doesn't pay off in the long run. Or two, the ability to do something in a shorter time frame or like which would seem like a shortcut is probably a direct reflection of years or months of building up either a skill set or like a way of thinking that allowed me to in this circumstance or in this situation like bypass the long route. So it's not necessarily still by me taking like the shortcut or the immediate gratification. It's still like I built up so much time and so much um I guess capacity to do this thing so well that now, yeah, I can get it done real quick or I can take a shortcut here because I know how to make up for it somewhere else. But even that is not really like, hey, I'm doing this because it's the easy way, and because I'm doing this now, like I won't pay for it later. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but for me, I haven't seen any really good examples of like I'm doing this thing for immediate gratification, and then in the long term, I look back and I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't take the better approach or the harder approach. Usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, I think for I think for me, I touch on it two parts. So when when I was younger, like I think like I use this as an example. So say like we you got your first car. When you're younger, like you can't buy your first car. Like you need help, or I mean I guess you can, but in most cases your parents or somebody helped out to purchase that item. So you get it, and yeah, instant gratification. You have appreciation for it,
Hmm.
but it hits a little different. You have a greater appreciation for when you go buy actually your first vehicle or something like that by yourself, and you're
Yeah,
actually making those payments on it. Like that comes in, and the appreciation is, even though you're excited, you get it. Someone else buys it for you, you get it. You're excited about it, but I think it's just more of a
hmm,
greater appreciation for when you actually put the work in yourself. And I can even use like, again, I know I keep going back to paying off my debt, but like even that as an example, like honestly, I'll be real. So paying it off was tough, and I got it paid
hmm,
off, and there was a sense of satisfaction that I did it myself. But if I would have just inherited some money or got a large windfall of cash and did it, I think I probably still would have been just as relieved and just as happy that I got it paid off. Now,
yeah,
I so I guess in a sense, I guess it probably almost the same, but I guess I wouldn't have the satisfaction of like, oh, I put in the work and did it myself. But honestly, like the end goal was to pay off my debt. So how I got there didn't matter. So as long as I reached that,
yeah.
then I think I would have had. I think I would have been good either way.
So like Lewis, I wanna challenge you on that just a little bit. And I don't know, everybody's different, right? But like, do you think that the person you grew into along that journey was so much more beneficial because of what you had to learn, how you had to sacrifice, how you had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable along that path? Do you think that that would have a much bigger impact on like your future, or do you think that like if you had just inherited the cash, that you would still be who you are with the thought processes that you have now for the future? Because that's the thing, like when I think of people who get this money or win or like become millionaires, and I heard this quote somewhere a long time ago. It's like if you become a millionaire before you've earned the millions, then you better develop into a millionaire quickly. Otherwise, you won't stay a millionaire.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's some benefit to me being able to do it and learning, because it taught me how to actually like learn how to deal with money. It piqued my
Hmm.
interest into learning how to be better with money. And I think before that, like it was just you get money, you spend it. So I don't think I would have, probably maybe eventually I probably would have developed those interests, because I don't know, it seems like financing and investment, like it's more, people more openly talk about it these days, as opposed to like it seemed
Hmm.
like earlier, like it didn't, before the internet age and social media age, it didn't seem like it was a subject that was talked about as
Yeah.
much, or even I would say probably like in the last like 5 years, it doesn't seems like there's been like a higher uptick in more people talking about it, more people that look like us that talk about it, that break it down a little bit differently for us to be able to process it and understand it. So I think I probably
Hmm.
would have got there, but I think that me going through the process definitely expedited, piqued my interest, and definitely gave me the confidence to be able
Hmm.
to not go back into debt and be able to manage my money, as if I would have got a bunch of money, like who knows, like I would have paid off the debt, but it probably would have been, that's why you hear a lot of times people like they win the lottery or they come across a large windfall of money, they end up going
Yeah.
broke because they don't develop those skills to learn how to manage or deal with that money. Same thing with like professional athletes, like they're walking
Mm-hmm.
into a situation where they've been poor all their life and not had money, and all of a sudden you responsible for dealing with millions and millions of dollars that you're over and oversee and have to manage. So I definitely think, to your point, I agree with you on that. Definitely learned a lot, and I definitely don't think I would
Yeah.
have had the same benefits, at least not at as fast as I got them by going through those
Mm-hmm.
struggles, and learning how to get my act together financially.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. So like talking about struggles is huge, and I think we were talking about this offline, but I definitely want to like bring this up in the conversation too, of like the concept of failure, like along that journey to success in any avenue. Like what has failure meant to you in that process, and what are some things that you took away from some of those failures that helped you, grow and develop and become, essentially more successful going forward?
I think the thing with failure is like failure when you fail at something, like you feel it, like
Mhm.
it it stings a little more. I mean, it's the same thing with like, I don't know, when someone does something well and like they get praise, but that one time they get that negative comment or that negative response, that's what people
Yeah.
harp on. So I think the same thing like with failure, like is the same thing with those learning lessons. Like if you go through life constantly winning, um, you never know what it's like. I think failure is where the growth happens. Like you can
Mm,
fail, or you can choose to like let it get you down or let it pitch you back. And in some cases, it may knock you back a step. But I think the growth to getting better and learning how to get over those obstacles, I think that makes you stronger as an individual, at least from my standpoint.
nice. Yeah. Yeah. Joe, did you have anything on the failure piece? Because I got a lot. I fail all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's kind of important to almost define failure. So,
Hmm.
how I see it is failure isn't really failure unless you accept it. I mean, there are some times where failures are pretty hard, where, there's not much you can do to change it. But if you
Yeah.
learn something from a failure, it's really hard to discern a failure from, a lesson. Perhaps how
Hmm.
expensive that lesson was, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what that is. But if you're able to bounce back from, what are perceived as failures, then it kind of takes away some of the power of what a failure is. And the quicker you get to adapting to that, you take some of that sting off. And for me, it came a little later than I would like it to have,
Hmm.
because I always define failure as like an F in school. So, you think about it, you're almost conditioned to think you got an F in school and you associate yourself as an F student. You kind of, you
Hmm.
identify with that failure. So in school, you're super afraid of it. You don't want to fail. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
stretch. You don't want to take classes. If taking that class is going to mean you're going to get a bad grade, you don't want to fail. It's frowned
Hmm.
upon. It's it's just super ingrained, and I feel like almost everyone growing up that failure is bad. And
Yeah.
so getting past that, it didn't hit me for a while because I coasted. Honestly, I coasted through school for a
Hmm.
long time. And then in college, it started to, I was like, oh, I can skip class as often
Yeah.
as I like. And I couldn't always pop into these tests and pass it with a couple hours of study. And I got popped several
Hmm.
times. And so, honestly, during that, I started questioning, like, am I intelligent? Am I
Yeah.
capable? Am I, I really started questioning myself versus really looking and being like, dude, you are really not giving any effort to this at all. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm.
more of a testament to that than your actual abilities. So that kind of helped me. And then, I don't know. And then a lot of the hardest things in life have been stuff that I turned into almost fuel. So anything
Yeah.
that's tough, I'll allow myself to feel it, but I put that energy behind me to drive me forward. So that's that's also another piece. I'm not necessarily sure if they're failures, but I feel
Yeah.
like failures and hard things or rough times kind of are a very similar feeling. So
Yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
that really answers it, but that's kind of how I think for failures, where to put it more succinct, it's really
Mhm.
how you respond to them. And the quicker that you respond in a way that's moving you forward, that you're learning, the quicker that really, in a way, failures go away.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. And I think in terms of the notion that it's not failure if you learned from it and if you grew from it is huge. Like one of the things I've observed in really successful people is failure is almost celebrated, but it's not all failure. It's a specific type of failure. It's we don't celebrate the failure due to a lack of effort or a lack of reaching the potential that you know you can reach. Like, so for example, like Joe, when you were talking about you just weren't showing up to class and that's why you failed. So that's not a failure that's celebrated. Like the lesson you learned from the failure is what catapulted you. But for me, in terms of like reaching success, you should seek the failure and celebrate the failure because the failures that you're seeking or celebrating are due to the fact that you've stretched yourself to a point where you're at the maximum amount of your capabilities. And that's what to me successful people are always failing at is, you know what? I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to take a project or I'm going to take a role or I'm going to put myself in a position that long term could be huge for me, but it's past my current capabilities. So if I fail, I'm good with that because I know that I stretched myself and the lessons I learned leading up to that failure and the lessons I'll continue to have with me after that failure will then get me to a new level, a new threshold that you can fail at an even bigger target. But now that old target that you failed at is not even a challenge anymore. So like to me, that's why successful people fail so often is because to your point about school, it's not about if I make an A, then I'm successful. If I make an F, then I'm a failure. It's a complete shift in mindset of if I reach the limit of my abilities and failed, then that was a successful experiment because I learned and I grew. And now I know what not to do, even. And now I can start from a new higher level and reach new limits. And that's to me where like failure really factors into becoming successful.
Oh, that's great. That's yes, absolutely, 100% agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, man. And I think, that's why
I
I
think
got
about it.
go ahead.
Go,
Oh no, I was just gonna
I'm listening.
say like, yeah, I was just gonna say like even when I think about real estate, like Lewis brought up real estate, and I'm like, man, I didn't learn that much when everything was going well. I only started learning stuff when I started to lose money or when a deal went south or when things didn't flow so smoothly. And then I had to get into the books and read, and then I had to get on blogs and like try to figure out what went wrong. And so those failures made me way better at investing for the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
I think those are some good points,
Yeah.
Shereen.
For sure. I love it,
You
man.
mentioned the real estate, and I think the first one I fell pretty hard on the first deal I did. So I definitely agree with that on real estate. And honestly, writing software, like you break so much. Like I constantly write code that does not work and things like that. So,
Mm,
and honestly, it's from those things that don't work that I learn. And I'm fortunate to be in a field where I can do that locally on my computer and just break a bunch of stuff and learn like, oh, that's why this doesn't work. So I
yeah,
think failure and responding to it applies everywhere.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Joe,
Yeah.
I think you touched on a good point earlier too about like um how you got to failure, like even like with the school thing of like you coasted for a certain point in your life and then you got to another level where you needed to grow. And I think sometimes like failure comes with like, you know, what may have got us to certain places in life isn't going to allow us to grow or proceed where we need to go, where we want to go. So sometimes, like, a reality check with failure comes in, like, oh, you've been doing things this way and
Mhm.
gotten this far. That's not going to work if you want to take it to this next level or grow. And same thing with your career. Like, I mean, as you advance on, like, there's things that got you to where you need to go, but in order for you to continue to move up and grow, you know, you have to do things that make you uncomfortable, where sometimes you may not be the best or you may fail in situations, but that propels you to help grow and get you to where you need to go. So think that was a good point you brought up earlier.
Yeah, for sure. Um, cool. So I know we're probably gonna wrap up soon, but I did want to know one more thing about just your concept of like physical well-being and how that correlates to success. When I talk about well-being, I'm thinking a little bit more on the mental side. So like how do you grow from like a mental perspective in terms of like well-being all around, good energy, good vibes, whatever it means to you to be mentally fit, and like how does that factor into your success? Because I think that there are probably some really good um, things that you do on a regular basis that people could take from. And I'm interested to hear like what you guys are doing to like really really grow in that space.
Joe, you want to elaborate on this one?
So,
I'll touch it.
sure, yeah, I can start.
I would
It,
say like transparency, like health wise, like I haven't been the best the last year or two. So
You just had a
that,
kid. You had a lot going on,
yeah.
Lewis. You get a pass, man.
But I can touch on. I mean, up until probably this last year, has been a lot of change. But yeah, but I can touch on, like, there's definitely, like, you know, baseline items that I have in place to where it allows me just to snap back in when I need to get. It's like, oh, I've went too long, like, outside of this area. Like, I do have baselines in place where, like, I know, like, eating healthy is going to allow me to perform better in all areas of life, whether it's
Mhm,
you know, work, whether it's being able to you know, just feel better overall, like affects your mood, your energy, and everything. So there's definitely, like, for me, there's definitely, like, certain baselines that I have in place um that I know that will propel me to go further. So um
mhm,
always, I mean, probably, like, Doreen, you touched on this earlier, but even things with, like, eating and dieting. So um I think only for breakfast and lunch is pretty much the same thing every day. It's where things get shaky is the dinner time. So that's that's always the biggest crutch for me. But I know when I do the groceries every week to do grocery haul, if I plan my meals out, I'm gonna be more successful than if I just go through the week and just be like, oh, I'll just eat whatever for the day. So I think just having those things in place, just knowing, like, ahead of time, like, what you're gonna eat. But that's what we talked about earlier, like having the same thing in place um,
mhm,
to make that easier. And same thing with working out too. Is like if I know, like, certain days, like if I have just a simple plan to know I'm gonna work out, you know, 4 or 5 days a week, and I'm gonna do these things, I do the same routine over and over. Now it's boring
mhm.
for me after a while, and sometimes I need to go vary it up and change it up. But I know if I have that plan in place, then it's gonna affect me all over in all areas of my life by just putting those simple guidelines in place.
Got it. Got it. Good stuff.
awesome.
Yeah.
Is my
Joe, what
connection horrible?
uh
It
I don't
keeps
know.
going
It
in and
froze
out.
on
We
my
can hear
screen.
you, but the video goes out occasionally, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay. I think my audio is super delayed too. But I'll dive into what I think about this. It's a great question and great answer, Lewis. How I see it, and specifically in regards to kind of, I'm going to speak to mental primarily.
Mhm,
Um, I think there's a lot of facets to it. One, and maybe the most important, is to be a little forgiving with yourself. So
Yes.
mhm.
your
Yeah.
mind state can change over time. You can, you might get frustrated. You might just deal with natural humanness, but just kind of recognize that that's what it is, because sometimes that resistance to that particular state can make that state even worse. So,
Mm,
to a degree, learn that it's going on, and then obviously work on techniques to work through things that might not be particularly productive. And then one piece that I try to do is it's easy to dismiss things that are like, oh, there might be a small benefit here, there might be a
mhm.
small benefit here. But if you add those up, you might get, pretty big benefits to your life. For instance, we talk about physical activity. There's a ton of
Yeah,
studies that talk about how that really makes your mental state much better. So I think
Yes.
that's important.
yeah.
You look at things that you eat. I think that's important. And you
Hmm.
look at honestly things that just go into your mind. So whether that's
Mm. Yep.
music that you're listening to, whether that's TV, I think to a degree it's important to at least balance it out. I'm not saying don't watch anything that's not healthy for you, but it's important to balance that out and put some respect into what goes into your brain will
Exactly.
impact you.
Yes.
It'll impact how you feel. It'll impact how you think. And it's just important to keep all those small things in mind. And if you at least put some emphasis into each of them, you'll have some, pretty significant gains. And lastly, I try to keep my mind as free of clutter as possible. So I don't
Yes.
like
Mm.
little tasks. I don't like little things. I don't like a bunch of little stuff. I really like it to be pretty focused and a pretty clean slate. And so I'll lately I've been trying to write things down or whatever, anything just to get stuff out of my mind, just to keep a
Yes.
little bit
Mm.
more clarity of thought.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
definitely a good point, Joe, with getting the things out of your head. Like that saves
man.
you. I'm good about getting that out. Just writing a note or taking a note on the notepad, getting it out. But another thing under that too, Joe, with even like with just getting things out of your head is like even with like decisions. Like I like certain things like small decisions and stuff like that. Like things that um I don't need input on or I need to provide input on like on a daily basis. Like even like with my partner, like she has like simple questions she'll ask me sometimes in the morning. I'm like, you just make the decision. Like I don't need to make the decision on that. So even like I try to remove as many as possible. So even like in most days, like I wear the same thing, like it's just a black shirt and black jeans. Um,
Mhm.
some days I'll put a white shirt in there to switch it up
On your
or a hat.
Steve
But
Jobs.
yeah, but I don't know. That just works for me. So like cutting down on those decisions because I learned that even the small things like they add up over time. Like
Hmm.
by the end of the day, like there's only so many your brain can process during the day, but where like I'm like mentally exhausted. So I try to do that as well. So I think that was a good point that you made there, Joe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Like
That's
for
an
me,
excellent.
it's really important to guard what you put into your mind. Like Joe,
Mm-hmm.
that point was huge because, I'll be honest, I purposefully don't watch the news. Like I just don't watch the news.
Same here.
It doesn't help me to know who got blown up in Cambodia if I know I'm not going to do anything about it. It just doesn't. And so, certain things like I'm not going to take in all of that negativity on a regular basis. And then also like yeah, I'll watch some trash TV, but primarily I'm going to try to pump my brain with positive messaging. Like,
Yep.
because at this point in life, there's so much media in our world that is going to feed you things that aren't necessarily good or beneficial for you, that it's like either you control how you're influenced or you're going to be influenced in a negative way. Like
Exactly.
unfortunately there's really no medium, there's no in between. So I very actively guard what goes in, and I very actively try to source for good books and good interviews and good articles and good like media outlets that, instead of even being like polarizing, are just about positivity. And like I'm trying to create an environment within my own brain because there's enough negativity without you looking for it. So that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Good stuff,
Absolutely.
man. I love these conversations. I know we touched on a lot of different avenues that kind of helped us out with success, and who knows what the next topics will be. But man, I appreciate the insight. I love learning from you guys, and hopefully, whatever we come up with next will be just as engaging, and we'll be able to dive in. And any other questions you guys have that are listening, put it in the comment section. Reach out. Um, and I know Lewis usually does the HouseQue plug, so I'll let you plug the HouseQue
Yeah.
app and some of the resources, Lewis.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, fellas, again for taking the time to do this. So I appreciate learning from you guys and meeting weekly. But yeah, if you guys are here, just go ahead and the link will be in the description. For we got a nice download on the website. You can also go check out the HouseQue out. And again, like I always mention on each of these interviews, if you guys have any questions or anything that you want us to touch on, please drop them in the comments below. We do read those and check them out. So we appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
All right. See you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. I think I